Welcome to Life Unscripted, Adulting Uncovered, the podcast for anyone out here doing their best to grow, heal, and not totally lose it in the process. I'm your host, Brennan, and if you ever felt like the only adult still figuring it out, don't worry, you're not alone. This is the place for you. Let's stop pretending and start talking. Guys, welcome. Welcome to the very first episode of Season 1. Everyone is welcome here. And I hope you always get some nugget of wisdom or reminder that will help you in figuring out life as an adult. I'm Brennan, and I'll be your host on this podcast. I started this pod because I noticed that we have an underserved demographic. People think we need to have life figured out. And if we don't, we're somehow broken or not living our life correctly, or we're not, quote unquote, being adults. This is what Life Unscripted is all about. Growth isn't linear, and being an adult doesn't come with a map. You're not late. You're not broken. We're all evolving. And I want us to embrace where we all are. And hopefully we find that we are complete right where we stand. And if we're not, are we aware of it? And what are we doing to actually change around it? Look, I'm not here to give you 10 steps to a perfect life. I'm not here to tell you how to be a zillionaire. I'm here to tell you the truth. And maybe through this pod, you feel a little less alone and a little less lost, and you accept that being an adult isn't easy. You don't have to have it figured out all the time. It's okay to be in a state of uncertainty. So I'll offer you some suggestions along the way to help improve your life, your interactions, and this is coming from someone who has spent over 4 decades at life. I've tried, I failed, I lost, I learned, and I keep showing up. And the wins stacked up way more than the losses to a very fulfilling life. So a little bit about me. This podcast is something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's deeply personal for me to share my experience and open up my life, but fear made me procrastinate. All the things your mind tells you when you're trying to grow. Finally, I said, F it, I have a story, and I hope that one person needs to hear this. So I press record. So indulge me a bit while I try and paint a quick picture. I grew up as an 80s baby and a 90s kid. In the 80s, it was all about denim, like rave hair gel, Aquanet hairspray, like hair was big, and fashion colors were bold and bright. And new wave music was emerging, so The Cure, Depeche Mode, and Duran Duran, these bands were becoming popular. And MTV had just started to come up. And if your family had cable, like you were the coolest person because you could watch MTV. So dating was more traditional at that time. Like people made phone calls and you met at malls and mall hangouts were a thing. And yes, to some of you, this may come as a surprise. Malls were a thriving business model. We didn't order everything online. And so house parties were very popular. But how you met was really in person. And if you really liked someone, you made them a mixtape. And the quality was really poor, but it was your ultimate show of like admiration and devotion to this person. And then came along the 90s, which was a whole different era. We got introduced to the late, great Tupac and the late, great Biggie. And then Dr. Dre came on the scene, Smashing Pumpkins, et cetera, et cetera. But what we started to see then was the internet was just coming up. Tech was slowly starting to surface. And people were ordering home PCs, which was a big deal. So then dating got slightly more laid back and very early chat rooms started to surface. But even then, how we connected was still mostly in person. So I'm just painting the picture that, times were different, choices were different, and we hadn't been shaped by streaming and dating apps and scrolling through social media all the time. And back in those days, you were really supposed to marry your high school sweetheart, land a job, stay at that job for 30 years, have 2 kids, buy a house, and then you could check the box that says, hey, I figured out life. But that wasn't my path. I struggled in school with ADD and ADHD. It was really hard for me to pay attention. And like a lot of kids in that time frame, I was prescribed Ritalin. And I don't even know if they still prescribe Ritalin today, but it was essentially the precursor for Vyvanse or Adderall. And back in those times, we really didn't understand ADD and ADHD like we do today, and it would show up for people very differently. And we didn't have the outlets that we have today for that disability. So needless to say, I didn't like school. I wanted to fit in, and I felt like I didn't. And after I got out of school, I fell into a party lifestyle and was hanging out with people that really weren't doing too much. And eventually I kind of had to make a decision. What do I want from life? Was it to continue in mediocrity, or was it to try and build something that has more meaning and purpose? And ultimately, I decided that I valued my life more than I wanted to avoid it. And it wasn't easy. I had to let go of all the friends that I had. I had to find new friends. I had to focus at work. I had to push for better and more challenging roles. But more than anything, I had to deal with the stuff inside that was holding me back. So I got into therapy. I built a spiritual practice. I leaned into my support system, my family, my friends. I worked out. I ate better. I continued to show up, do the right thing, even when no one was looking, even when I didn't want to. And professionally speaking, I kept moving forward. I found ways to bring value and solve problems and to grow. And that momentum built opportunities. And fast forward to today, I lead teams through complex programs and organizational change to help deliver innovation at scale. And it's not just about the work, it's a lot about the people. I mentor people, I help them grow in their careers, and I build teams rooted in trust, transparency, and authenticity, which are traits we're going to talk about more on this podcast at some point. But still, I had moments where I was wondering, do I have life figured out? Am I going to be seen as a fraud? And I feel like I'm behind on something. And then it dawned on me, behind who? Because when I zoom out, my life is full. Like I can travel when I want. I have great friends. They call to check on me. My family relationships are strong. I own a home. I'm healthy. So what's not together? What does having it together mean? When you scroll through Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever, and depending on how your algorithm is configured, you get hit with this flood of pornographic wealth. Ferraris, dream homes, perfect bodies, perfect routines. There's gurus selling you their courses, their plans, there's formulas, their 5-step miracles. Everybody's got something to sell you. Then dating apps may pressure you to feel like you need to be in some type of relationship. And maybe your upbringing might have put some undue pressure on you. If I don't do X by the time I'm 30, if by 35 I'm not doing Y, if by 40 this hasn't happened. But behind some of those posts about the dream home and these Ferraris, I wonder, is there someone thinking, am I really happy? Look, there's plenty of people on social media that have found a formula that works. They're living very rich and fulfilling lives because they've put in the work to make those things happen. There's people that have real thriving relationships at their home and their businesses. Their life is full. Their businesses are growing, and that's because they've put in the work. But others, some of them are just as lost as the rest of us. They just happen to have more stuff to show you. And listen, we've seen it all, right? People who had quote unquote everything fall from grace. Celebrities, influencers, public figures, dignitaries, tax evasion, affairs, sexual misconduct, scandal, racketeering. The list goes on. Don't forget, success doesn't mean someone's balanced. So I think we need to normalize being in progress. I think we need to normalize figuring it out as we go. We need to stop acting like there's some finish line we're failing to reach. So I'm going to ask you, what's something in your life that feels unresolved or uncertain? And who said you're late with that thing? What if you gave yourself grace versus pressure? If you showed yourself love versus failure? I'm not saying don't dream big. You should want Ferraris and mansions in Malibu. But don't confuse having those things with being complete. You're not unfinished because you're single. You're not off track because you haven't made it by someone else's rules. This is your life. You get to choose what you want to do, and above all else, you get to choose what making it looks like to you. I'm in my 40s, and I just packed up my life, moved across the country, and ended up right where I started. And then I decided I like where I just came from and want to move back. Like, I'm a full-fledged adult. I have all these responsibilities. Should I be packing up my life and moving across the country? And my answer is yes. I can do what I want as long as it's not impacting me negatively, financially, or causing others pain. Does that make me less of an adult? Does it make me less wise, less stable? No. It makes me human. I'm allowed to pivot, and you are too. But with every decision, you gotta own it. Take the lessons along the way and apply them to your life to iteratively make improvements. Otherwise, you'll keep spinning in cycles, blaming the city, the job, the person, the partner, when really the common denominator in every equation is you. Remember, I follow myself wherever I go. So I'll ask you, are you repeating the same mistakes in your relationships? Are you dating the same type of person because you don't feel worthy of more? Are you still in the same financial cycle because you avoid facing your habits? Are you arguing about the same stuff with your partner over and over and over again? These things happen, but when they keep happening, it's not bad luck. It's not bad timing. That's a pattern. And patterns can and should be changed. Again, you're not supposed to have life figured out all the time. You're supposed to show up, be honest, and try again and again. And remember to be kind to yourself along the way, because the relationship that matters most is the one that you have with yourself. So watch how you talk to yourself. How much time do you spend scrolling on social media comparing? What do you feed yourself all day in your mind? What's your mental radio station on? What's that loop in your head saying? Is it comparison, regret, fear? Remember, living in the past is regret. Living in the future is fear. But being present and doing what's in front of you today, that's where execution must be. It's where growth starts. So for now, I'll leave you with that to ponder until next time. Guys, I've got a lot more content coming. We'll talk about vulnerability, accountability, peace with the past, dating in your 40s, loneliness, and designing your life to have meaning. So I hope you join me back on the next episode. Thanks for hanging out on Life Unscripted. If something hit, share it with someone else. And remember, life is better when we stop pretending and start talking.